Hey there folks, welcome to Spectrum Pulse. We talk about music, movies, art, and culture. And today we're going to be talking about the newest album from Pop 1280, titled Paradise. I guarantee the majority of you did not see the review when I covered this band the first time. And frankly, I'm amazed that in the summer of 2013, after a random browse through Pitchfork, that I decided to cover them at all. More out of bored curiosity than anything else. And while I haven't really revisited much of that album back in 2013, I do distinctly remember Pop 1280 as a weird, twisted, dark little band, driving some surprisingly solid melodies through the noise to create a hollow, rattling, somewhat industrial flavor, with lyrics that seem to alternate between punk railing against the machine and the craven horrors that humanity engaged in to survive at the very bottom. And while I wasn't always wild about frontman Chris Bugg's delivery or the haphazard mixing, I did think their sophomore release, Imps of Perversion, was a step in the right direction to emphasize the band's strengths. They got overshadowed in the rough, noisy murk of their debut album. And thus, when I heard that the third album had opted for an even bigger, even more electronically enhanced sound, further polishing and building off the foundation of their last album, I was definitely interested at least. So, better late than never, I dug into their third album, Paradise. What'd I get? Well, I feel I should like this album a lot more than I do, because in theory it does exactly what it should do. Take the murky, howling post-punk and noise of Pop 1280, fuse it with the wiry and razor-sharp electronic synths that only contribute more to that cyberpunk feel in which they've always tried to go for, and then crank it up to 11 in terms of sheer, raw bombast. There's a greater focus on melody while still maintaining the atmosphere, the delivery is as visceral and powerful as ever, and yet I don't really love this album. I think it's probably the best thing the band has ever done, but I feel like something is still kind of missing and holding Pop 1280 back from really smashing through for me, and this will be my chance to try to explain why, if only for myself. So let's start off with the instrumentation and the production, and here, the majority of what I have to say, it's all praise. Well, of course you get the jagged spikes of noise and the seething guitar feedback that alternatively carries a fragmented melody, or on tracks like USS ISS or Kingdom Come, just sprays over everything. This is probably the most melodic and groove-driven record they've released to date, mostly courtesy of a choice to ground the majority of these songs in wiry, pulsating low synths that hammer an aggressive tempo, and almost always nail the great balance between being coldly synthetic and organically grimy. Even on the moments where they just seethe, like on the opener Pyramids on Mars, that melody does return for greater interplay in a faded piano that balances against eerie and melancholy incredibly well. And the percussion here, just top quality, either through the explosive drum work that drives tracks like the killer gothic groove on Phantom Freighter, or the two-step shift on In Silico, or the more sparse skeletal moments like the exercise in atmosphere that is the title track with its out-of-key guitars and rickety beat, to Rain Song, where the cryptic paranoia and melodic fragments are punctuated by what sounds like instruments shattering against a chilling little skitter in the background. Hell, if I were to criticize the production, I'd say that some of the pieces feel a little bit too softened or muted to really match the grime and rawness of the rest of the album. Like the decent but could have been better fuzzed out groove on Chromidia, or that odd burble that just softens the groove on Kingdom Come for no discernible reason. But then again, this is an album that pushes the underlying production dichotomy of Pop 1280 to the absolute limit. They're a band that's always gone for a punk aesthetic and production that's seedy and grimy and raw, and yet to capture the scale of their ambition and scope in their writing, they're reaching the limit of what they can do without cranking up the heaviness and going straight metal, piling on the reverb to swamp things out, or opting for a more theatrical presentation and potentially compromising some of that atmosphere. And I say all that because nowhere is that dichotomy shown more than in our frontman, Charles Bugg. Now, I've said in the past that he reminds me a lot of a low-rent Nick Cave, but I'd argue here it's a little bit more complex than that, mostly because Nick Cave did leave behind his grimy birthday party roots for something more bombastic and theatrical. Charles Bugg instead is pivoting towards more of a gothic dance punk with his more brash, full-throated howls. And to his credit, it's showing a lot more range than I would otherwise expect, finally coming into his own as that driving frontman and presence. It's why tracks like Pyramids on Mars, or especially Rain Song or Phantom Freighter, have so much impact when they lean into his vocals, which leads to probably my biggest production issue on this album. When you have such a force of personality, it's not the best idea to have him layered to the point of incomprehensibility like on USS ISS or Kingdom Come. Now, this has always been the issue with Pop 1280 since their very inception, and while I think they're on the right path to cleaning things up a little bit here, it's probably the first big factor that keeps me from really getting on board with this band. And the other factor probably lyrics and themes. Now again, I like a lot of what they're doing here. Pop 1280 leaning into the bigger scope of dystopian cyberpunk is the natural outgrowth to the extension of their sound, and they've always had a much more visceral slice of the mood than most of the other groups. They can tap into that seedy underbelly that underscores the oppressed and dehumanized, getting into the underlying paranoia and ruined infrastructure for those at the very bottom of it all. And while I'm not really always into these relentlessly nihilistic attitudes, the writing is often good enough to pull me in thanks to the details. Pyramids on Mars, great example, as the titular line is often used as an extended metaphor for a protagonist that he shouldn't fool himself into thinking that things will get better, only emphasizing the alien nature of the situation all the further. And I really like how songs like Phantom Freighter and Kingdom Come lean into the coming doom as the system starts to come apart at the seams, trying to revel in it all, with the echoing intercom on the forward track seeming to glitch as it utters, "Everything is wrong." I like how while it rails against the system that dehumanizes, like on Chromidia or USS ISS, it shows the alternative. The seedy decay of Rain Song or the genuinely unsettling The Last Undertaker might not be preferable or all that much better. And it underlines the main point of Paradise. It might be warped and perverted and not your idea of paradise at all, but if humanity's creating it, you're probably never going to find your utopian dream. It's going to be a nightmare for somebody. Now look, that's a potential theme. There's a lot going on there, but that's the issue I also have with the writing, and I'll admit it's a personal foible of mine, is that a lot of these conclusions are driven more by subtext instead of actual text, which means that parts of this album can feel a little bit underwritten, a little bit haphazard. It's minor. The more I read through the text, the more little bits of cleverness really leap out at me. But with a few songs like In Silico running a little long and not quite evolving lyrically the same way they do musically, I feel this album has the mood and atmosphere, but not quite all the lyrical gut punch to tie it all together and really bring together as a cohesive whole. Now that said, I do like and admire this album. I don't quite think Paradise by Pop 1280 is the career-defining powerhouse that it could have been, but they're definitely getting closer with every album, and that continued promise is exciting to see further develop. So for me, light 7 out of 10, definitely a recommendation, especially if you're into the noisier side of goth rock that isn't afraid to fuse in elements of dance punk and be really riotous and kind of fun. And if you're not into albums that will become goth club staples in the next few months, check it out regardless. We're getting a lot of dystopian records these days, and I'll take this over Megadeth's new album any goddamn day of the week. So yeah, thanks a lot for watching. If you'd like to like and subscribe, I'd be more than grateful. Anything else I might be able to do to improve my presentation, or any other albums coming out that you want me to take a look at, I will try to give them a listen. Just not Simple Plan. I'm not covering Simple Plan. No, stop. I'm not talking about it. Get over it. But till then, I'm Mark, you're watching Spectrum Pulse, and I'll see you next time.